paint on the exterior has now fully cured and the interior was completed in the last episode, so it's time to button up some of the final details and get this build finished. So first of all, I needed to mask off some parts of the body in order to paint some black on the trim pieces and also on the inside for the interior headliner. And while I was still spraying anyway, I figured I'd paint the brake calipers and the wheels too before finishing that all off, so those could be put onto the build later on as well. For the wheels, I wanted to go with a gold/bronzy color. That is a factory option on these cars, but I didn't really have any specific jar of paint ready mixed to go, so I needed to mix my own, and I used a variety of different browns and golds that I had laying around, mixing it up until I had the color that I was after. And I really am glad I did, because this is the perfect shade of gold bronze that I was looking for, and I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. With those painted, I let those cure for a bit, and also the same with the calipers. I applied some decals and then finished it off with a 2K gloss clear. Those were set aside to cure, and then in the meantime I could move on to painting all of the black trim on some of the interior door pieces and window surrounds, etc. Those will all be covered with some of the clear parts, but it's still nice to have them all fully black so they don't have any weird shading of other colors flashing through. With that said and done, I could move on to unmasking it and then getting ready for some brush painting of some of the other details on the underside for the wheel wells. That simply was a lot easier to do with a brush instead of having to mask it all off. I let the paint dry for a bit and then could move on to the assembly. This was pretty much all done with some super glue from Bob Smith Industries, the super gold version. You could also do it with the Maxi Cure, but I simply just over time noticed that the super gold version is pretty much good enough for most applications, and it has the added benefit of being a super glue but also not leaving a white haze. So that's pretty much the reason why I'm using it on most, if not everything, on a build 9 out of 10 times. Like I mentioned in the interior build video, the door panels were glued into the interior of the body and not onto the interior tub. So as you can see, those were glued in first, and then the rest of the tub could be slid in as well. The main chassis pan could then also be glued in, and I could then start focusing on some more of the exterior work, like all of the bumper inserts for the front, rear, the side skirts, and all the other bits all around. There were some exhaust tips supplied in the kit, and these were a black chromey finish, and somehow during the removal of the sprues I completely broke one in half, so I had to figure something else out, and that was a 4mm exhaust tube from Scale Production. For some of the grills there were some photo etch pieces as well. These were simply glued in after the fact, as I don't really like painting these all that much after cutting them out of the sprues. A lot of times the paint just chips off, so I just like to glue them in place, let that glue set for a couple of minutes while I do some other stuff, and then paint them later on with a brush and some black paint. It pretty much disappears and looks like a really nice finish to me, and it doesn't have the risk of chipping. With the paint on all of the mesh now cured, I could start applying some of the other parts that need to go on top of them, simply just gluing them in place and then moving on to the next bit. paint and the clear coat on the calipers and the wheels has now also fully cured, so those could be glued in place and then the wheels could be put on top. The center locking nuts are separate parts and those were painted in a matte black, then glued in place, and the decal will be put on later on at the end of the video. And I can't really avoid it all that much longer, so I figured why not just do it. This is the part of one of these resin kits that I dread most, and that is gluing in the clear parts, specifically the windows. I really don't like doing this as it could go horribly wrong and then you're pretty much screwed. Nonetheless, on this kit, all of them fit really well. They were nice and thin and flexible, so they fit into shape and contour really easily and stuck down with a little bit of super glue pretty much instantly. So I was really happy that I didn't make any major faults or mistakes here, and it went pretty smoothly. One of the main big features on the GT3 RS in this case is the wing. Now this is a pretty big one and has a lot of complicated parts to it, so the wing risers or uprights were put on first. Then I turned the model around as this wing piece hangs from the underside and glued those pieces in carefully as well. Now I did notice during the unboxing that the wing is a little bit bowed and not really as straight as it needs to be. I tried fixing it, but there wasn't really all that much that I could do about it, so I simply just had to do with it as is and have a bit of a happy wing. It might not be all that obvious from the photos and the videos that you see right here, but at the end I have some photos of the finished product where it's a little bit more obvious. Now it's not a really big deal, but it is a little bit of a letdown, and I would have liked to see them put some extra time into these pieces to make sure that they were dead straight and not as bent as they are in the kit. So in the meantime, the headlight lenses have been glued in and some of the taillight pieces or some of the red reflectors on the rear bumper were painted with a clear red. And then I could move on to adding some decals on the center locking nuts for the wheels and also the RS logos on the sides before peeling off the protective plastic on the clear parts to give them their final look, and could then pretty much move on to the finished product. So with that said, another one finished and in the box. I've put it into my new display case that I've showed off a couple of weeks ago on the channel next to some of its other Porsche mates to have a nice little bit of a collection to view from my bed. If you're interested in one of these, I will be leaving links in the description down below, and of course don't forget to use my discount code for a nice hefty amount off on your order. If you're interested in purchasing one of these models from PZY Model / KitBox, I will again leave a link in the description down below to their Facebook page. Just send them a message and they're more than happy to help you out. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this build series as much as I did building this kit, and I'd like to see you guys next time.